Comic reviews, extra sweet. Tune in, folks, and don't be late. Interviews that sure are great. From Kentucky's rolling hills we stream. Matt delivers every fan's dream. Claim your favorites, join the quest. Heroes for hire are the best. Superheroes, villains too. Every issue something new. Golden age or modern finds, entertaining minds of all kinds. Comic book sales you can claim. Join the club, win comic fame. Hear the stories, catch the vibe. Heroes for Hire feels alive. From Kentucky.
Oh, hey guys, how you doing? Matt here, Heroes for Hire Comic Club channel, your host. Well, actually, I'm the only host. I'm the, but anyway, I digress. That was my I meant to change that intro today because I realized it's probably 30 seconds too long. But what can you do? Anyway, I have a special guest tonight. It's probably one of the first people I started watching that talked about comic book related stuff. And, and I kind of advanced from there and got further on into the rabbit hole of the YouTube comic book world. But he doesn't really need introduction. He's probably, I guess, I don't know, you could really call him a pioneer of like comic book content on YouTube, I think. Well, here he is. It's Comic Tropes.
Hey, Matt. Thank you for having me. That's very kind of you.
Hey,
how are you?
Thanks. Oh, I'm doing pretty good. We got like I told you backstage, have a flood advisory going on.
I know. But, I'm sorry. I hope that it doesn't interrupt anything.
We're actually in the community I live in Pineville, Kentucky. They have a flood wall. They can close it. So I think we're good. Even if we, I don't know if we're going to lose it. I don't know. We should be good.
Okay.
I always say it would be a good town for The Walking Dead to have filmed in because they could have been walled in, like if there is a zombie apocalypse, come to Pineville, Kentucky. We have a wall around the entire city.
I didn't know that you were from Kentucky. What part of Kentucky?
Southeast Kentucky. It's
okay.
I'm on the border with Tennessee and Virginia.
Yeah, I've been out there before. It's been a while, but when Robert lived out there, I would actually visit him and stuff like that, and Tony Moore. Robert's moved to L.A. and Tony's more in like the Cynthiana area.
Yeah, Robert's he's a legend around here. I mean, especially in Cynthiana, they have, they've kind of they let you know that's where he's from. So
yeah.
I mean, I like it too. I always thought it was cool when he came out, and I found out he was from Kentucky. I was like, oh, well, I'm from Kentucky, so it makes me kind of like him even more. Kind of like a hometown hero,
Oh, absolutely. And Tony's an actual Kentucky colonel, which is an actual rank there. I think that's really cool that your state can appoint a colonel for various things.
He's in a distinguished company because Hunter S. Thompson was a Kentucky colonel too.
Yeah.
So
it's very cool. Yeah. Some people think Colonel Sanders was just a funny name, and it's like, no, he was a colonel.
Yeah. No, he was an actual colonel, and that's actually funny you mentioned Colonel Sanders. The original Kentucky Fried Chicken is 25 miles from my house.
Oh, right on.
Yeah. So it doesn't taste any different there. I mean, I doubt it. It probably tasted better, considering all the additives they add into food now. It probably tasted a lot better back then, maybe arguably than it does now. I don't know.
I don't know.
Okay. I guess we have to have a time machine to do that, but that's another.
We could probably talk about fried chicken for a good 15, 20 minutes if we really wanted to.
I could get it out. I'll show you. If I can find it, I'll show you this thing one of my buddies drew. If I can find it. Okay, well, you know what it is when you say you're going to, how it is, you say you're going to find something in a comic box and you're not going to find it most of the time. I'm very unorganized
I
right
have
now.
no organization to the comics that I buy, just to be clear. I don't have time to alphabetize them or anything. They just go in a box. So
Yeah, I have. I think it's a box nearest to me. I've got a stack like this high. I haven't read yet, and so I put. I don't. Put, I know some people are like very precise. Like they'll have like this is where they go, and then
sure.
when I get through reading them, I put them in these boxes.
I admire
Yeah,
that. I admire that. I wish I had that kind of time. Just feel like
I
I'm
don't.
always working personally.
Yeah, I don't really. I don't know. I'm just. I don't have the. I don't know. I think I got too much ADD or something
Mm,
in my brain. But I'm glad you could show up. Appreciate it.
happy to do it.
First question I ask everybody. I'm just kind of like these are like my James Lipton inside the actor studio questions, except this is for people I've seen on YouTube or talked to on YouTube. What was your origin story like? Did how did you get your comic book collecting origin story? When did you fall in love with comics?
Oh, okay. Yeah. You know what it was like? Of course, I'd like read a couple comics here and there, like that my parents had picked up for me. But right around, I want to say when I was in third grade, I had a paper route, so I had a little bit of money. And at the end of my paper route, in my sort of small town, it ended near a convenience store. We weren't even big enough to have, 7-Elevens. It was like,
Yeah,
a mom and pop convenience store. And one day I went in to maybe get I don't know, a candy bar or something. And I noticed the spinner rack of comics. At that time, I was really into G.I. Joe and Transformers. That's just what was popular back then. And I saw a Transformers comic on the rack, and I was like, "Oh, I did." I thought it was just like the toys in the cartoons. So I bought that, enjoyed it. The next week went back. I didn't know how often they came out. There wasn't a new Transformers, but there was the GI Joe, and picked that up, and that was a really good comic. So honestly, it was like Transformers was sort of like the thing that first caught my eye. GI Joe, I was like, "Oh, some comics are really good." And from there, just started like trying other things, Spider-Man, Batman, etc. Yeah,
yeah. I was like, GI Joe was it for me. It was just like the storyline. I still like remember. I don't know if you're like this,
so good.
but you can elaborate after I tell you. It was like there's like a story run where like Ripcord was like replaced by Zartan,
Yeah,
and then they found and Zartan infiltrated the GI Joe headquarters, and it was the first appearance of Sergeant Slaughter. And the reason it stuck out in my mind, it's like the first thing I bought with my own money was those like up to that story.
I totally remember that. Yeah. So there's two ripcords. Sergeant Slaughter punches one out, and they were like, "How did you know which one was Zartan?" He's like, "I had a 50-50 shot." That was good, man. Yeah, that was a good comic back then.
I guess.
I liked it. I liked it because there were stakes to it. Like, that felt as a kid, it felt like way more serious than say what I'd seen on the cartoon. Because, for instance, there'd been a
Yeah.
storyline where Ripcord had a girlfriend, and she actually got killed by Cobra after several issues after she'd been introduced. So I was like, oh wow, some of the characters in this book will die. Oh, that sounds serious.
I remember when Zartan killed Serpentor.
Oh yeah, that was the Cobra
That was
Island War.
Yeah,
That was
I was like,
that was one of the
whoa.
best stories ever.
And the other thing I liked about it, and I don't know if you agree or not, but I think where Larry Hama had been in Vietnam,
Yes,
he knew all the military stuff. I think it really added a lot of realism to something that was kind of fantastical. Like I always felt like the comic book was more grounded than the cartoon was. They showed on
no
Saturday.
question. I mean, there's some stuff that he just wouldn't add. Like he didn't want to tackle Cobra Law, and there were a couple other sort of sci-fi ideas that he was like, no, not in my world. You're right. I think it's and I mean he's still writing it to this day, and I think his military background is definitely added a groundedness and certain details. There's just the way that people talk. You can kind of tell it feels very authentic. He said that he's based a lot of the characters off of people he knew and served with. And he also was the editor of a great wartime comic called The Nam, which was pretty realistic in how it depicted the Vietnam War. Because like every month that the comic came out, a month had passed in story time. That was really nice. Yeah. And the early issues with the Michael Golden art, I really, really
Yeah,
liked.
I'm really hunting for the one with the Avengers on the cover. Is one I've been looking for. So
Boy, it's hard to remember that one off the top of my head. There was one with the Avengers on the cover.
I swear I saw it today. My friend picked it up
Hmm.
at a comic shop.
I remember they'd done like one, like 2-issue storyline with the Punisher, and that was just sort of really a Punisher story, but with the Nom title. But yeah, I don't remember the Avengers after. But there's always something. There's always something to discover out there.
I know. It's crazy. They actually came up. My friend does a show, a comic book trivia show on Monday nights, and
Okay.
that question came up about a question about the Nom, and it was like, who was the main character? And I was like, oh, I know this, and I was like, yeah, I knew it. I still remember that stuff. So I
Wow.
think it sticks with you. Like, do you ever have a book or books or a few books maybe that you stand in your own mind like something where you were the one that made the decision, like, I'm going to get that, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
like your dad and your mom brought you books, or you had books that they had or
Yeah.
were laying around.
Honestly, a lot of the stuff that I got fairly early on, and a little bit more of the indie stuff that I was discovering, like the Tick and Mutant Ninja Turtles. I remember that stuff very well, like discovering that. Thank you, Southern Comic Geek. The Nom 41. Okay. I'm sure if I saw it, it would like bring something back. Right now, it's a blank spot in my trivia memory. I feel
Yeah,
very bad. I'm such a
there's stuff.
bad comics fan.
Well, I'll put you in timeout for just a few minutes, and then we'll
Yeah,
be
I think
all
I deserve it.
right. Okay, well, so it was at the time. I don't. There's always a point where you're reading them, but at what point did it become from like reading to like, okay, I'm collecting these? Did you ever do that? Like collect like runs, or like I'm trying to get all of a certain set of like Amazing Spider-Man or anything like that?
I don't think I ever really came up with a cool idea. Like I've heard yeah, people that get like all number ones or get all the appearance of a certain character. One that I really liked was a guy would always get the final issue of a comic. I was like, okay, that takes some
Yeah,
research.
yeah,
That's a cool way to do it. Um, and mine was really just I kind of read a little bit of everything. Like and I got a lot of comics throughout the 80s and 90s. And then like the artists and illustrators and writers that excited me the most, I there were there were very few trade paperbacks and stuff back then, so it was a lot of back issue hunting back
yeah.
then, just to like fill out like, oh, let's read all of GI Joe, let's read a bunch of Spider-Man going backwards, and that was kind of fun. It's always fun to hunt for things. Once you
Yeah.
get it, you're like, okay, fine, I've got it. The hunt is the fun part for me.
Oh, it's not as it doesn't feel as good after or like you'll find something. And I've watched like Lunch Money Comics.
Yeah.
You'll see videos where he does this, or he'll just find a great deal, or like Dave, West Coast Avengers. He always shows where he goes out and gets those books.
Yes.
And I had like a windfall like that one day, and I got like 5 Dave Stevens covers of the same
Oh,
book.
cool.
And the guy just says, "I just want $35 for the whole lot." And most of it was just like Harbinger or Valiant stuff like that, tops, stuff that wasn't really that. But then those were in there, and I'm like, "Oh," I said, "Are you sure?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "My wife says I got to get it out of the garage." I was like, "All right." So sometimes you run into things like that, and it's like after you get it, it's almost like, well, I got it. Now what? Now it's on to the next thing. It's like a never ending.
I gotta find the next thing. Yeah.
Yeah, you got. I'm already doing that now. I've already went down the rabbit hole of trying to get all of the Nightfall, Night Quest, and Night's End by Batman because I read it when I was in high school. So
Yeah, I remember picking that up off the shelves, getting all of it back then. Don't have any of it anymore. Sold all my comics just about 11 years ago. And slowly finding certain things that I was like, I wish I still had that, and deciding to get them. But mostly trying to find new stuff.
I had my apartment broken into, and they got like all of my. I had like all these Spawn, and like.
Oh yeah.
And all the G.I. Joe. I had every
Really?
one of them except the last issue, and well, they just got, I don't know who it was. And then, but, so I quit for a while and I just read trades for a long time. And then I kind of got back into it again. So I'm interviewing myself now. I'll shut up. I babble
No, I think your
sometimes.
audience likes that stuff. Don't worry. Don't worry. Your audience wants to know about the host.
Well, it's, that, I don't know. It's like also, it's like a nostalgia, I guess, thing to it. That's like, I don't really,
Yeah.
I can't afford to collect a lot of like golden age. And I definitely can't afford to be collecting like, any pre-code horror books,
Right.
there's no punch number 10 in my future. But except if it's a reprint, of course. But so I kind of started out with like nostalgic. What did I read when I was a kid? And then you know how it is. But then I got out of that. It was like, well, you know what? Let's see what's going on with these Werewolf by Night comic books or Swamp Thing. When you get into the artists like Bernie Wrightson and
Yeah.
you kind of go down the rabbit hole. Like you start out with people like Rob Liefeld and Todd McFarlane, who I like, and Jim Lee. But then you start discovering more people, like.
Yeah, you start discovering like, well, who influenced them? And you keep like tracking it back, and then you find something new. That's great. Like I'm grateful that at a certain point I just started really appreciating what the art form of comics and the medium of comics was. So because like I love that nostalgic feeling, but I can't always get that same nostalgic buzz, but I can still get really excited when I find a writer or an artist is using the storytelling abilities in front of them with comics specifically in a really interesting way. And I'm like, okay, well, how did this person try to do it versus that person? Like, I love the super rare situations where you've seen two different people work on the same story. Sometimes it's the same issue. Sometimes it's adapting something. Not lots of examples out there, but there are some. And I love seeing that, like how two different people approach the same story. Love it.
Yeah, it was like, I just recently rewatched the interview you did with Peach Momoko.
Oh yeah.
And
Thank you.
like her storytelling, like for me, I know some people were put off by it. And if you're expecting like Uncanny X-Men, yeah, you're going to be in for a disappointment. But her art is just the way she's done it though is just so interesting. But like,
yeah, it's very unique.
I don't know. It's like I was used to like the manga style because I like Akira and stuff like that. I know it kind of has that feel to it, but it's not like unapproachable. But I don't know. I'm going
it's
off
very
on
much her own thing because I mean she's influenced by Japanese subculture and stuff, but she didn't grow up reading manga. She didn't grow up reading comics. So she's sort of just taken the way she approaches painting, and she's very, very quickly learned how to do sequential storytelling. And I think she's quite good at it. But she is unique, she does her own thing.
People to like help guide her too in that direction. Like the writer, one of the writers, he was talking about that on your interview, I guess.
Yeah,
that's what I was because it came to me. I had to watch it today again, and he said that she would run stuff by him, and he would tell her what he was going to do, or like they would kind of collaborate on it,
Right,
and,
right. She's talking about, she's got a very unique collaboration process with Zach Davison, and she's been taught a lot, like how to do sequential stuff by guys like CB Cebulski, Marvel's editor-in-chief, sitting down and going over like, well, this is how comics work. And she just gets it. She gets it.
Yeah. I even have my mom as an artist interested in it now. So
that's so cool.
And she's like, that's actually her favorite artist is Peach Momoko. Because she said,
so cool.
She says it reminds her of a Japanese watercolor paintings, the way she does it.
Yeah.
And it's really like almost like a piece of art. And you could, I don't know if some people are like, I don't know why they go crazy over that. Well, it's something different. And I don't know how you feel about it, but when people are acting like, oh, comics are done, comics are dead, and then somebody like her comes out, and I'm like, well, maybe they still got a chance.
I think that comics always have some great stuff and some terrible stuff in any era. And you just need to sort of like sometimes be recommended good stuff. So that we tend to remember the best stuff. We don't always remember the bad stuff. So sometimes we look with like nostalgia glasses back and we were like, well, when I discovered comics, that's when they were great. if you take another critical look, you go, okay, there was actually some crap that came out back then too.
Oh, yeah.
But it's easy to forget about all that. We remember what was great. And I think that there's always something great. It's just not
Yeah.
always the popular thing now.
Yeah.
It might become popular later.
We always want to remember Secret Wars, but we tend to forget Black Cat was a thing.
Yeah. All sorts of weird, like, licensed comics and things like that. Or, yeah. It's all right.
Some of them that kind of collect now are kind of like a fetish, though. Like people kind of, it seems like some people kind of like fetishize some of these like weird ones, or like the adaptation ones, and buy stuff like that, or like even if it's a bad comic, I know people that bought every 25th anniversary border cover.
Sure.
And but yeah, there was a lot of bad things that we tend to forget.
That's all it is. Is there's always good, there's always bad. Sometimes you just need a little help finding the good. I don't know.
Yeah. All right. Let's see here. Okay, what was your growing up? What was your favorite comic book series that you enjoyed reading?
Well, sort of talked about it. Where initially it was G.I. Joe.
Yeah.
That very quickly, Spider-Man and Batman became some of my early favorites. And I was getting like everything, I have to admit. I like if it was on the spinner rack, I was getting it. Not just Marvel and DC, but Now Comics had distribution and stuff. Nobody remembers them really anymore. But if there was an Eclipse comic or something like that, or if I went to a comic book store, like I was saying, like Ninja Turtles, Usagi Yojimbo, a lot of the black and white stuff. So I was getting just about everything. But like early favorites were Spider-Man and Batman. I think that I was just, lucky enough that there were some really talented people working on those throughout the 80s and 90s.
Yeah. And I used to get a few of those. Is it Comico?
Comico, yes.
Comico. And the Eclipse comics actually, people say what they want. They were actually pretty cool. Some of them. They had some cool horror.
They took chances.
Sci-fi titles and.
Yep.
And I like the Alien Worlds. I got a lot of my uncle who passed away.
I remember Alien Worlds.
Several years ago, he passed away. And then the collection got passed down to me, and he had all the EC hardcovers in the slip cases.
Oh, good.
And it's just like,
man,
it was like a museum of like cool, like 70s.
Absolutely.
Like,
those guys like Johnny Craig, Jack Davis, just so many. EC really did have fantastic talent pool.
He had a book. It was like an anniversary, like I don't know, like a commemorative book. And it was like this big, and it was embossed with gold. And I opened it up, and I got nervous opening it. It had Bill Gaines and every one of their signatures. There was like 15 signatures of these people.
Really?
And I was like, oh my God.
Yeah. The actual signatures.
Yeah.
That sounds like something very special. Congrats.
And I was like, well, and they were going to sell them in a yard sale. I'm like, no, don't do that. Please do not do that.
That's yeah.
If I had,
I'm sure it would have ended up in somebody's hands that loved it eventually, but
yeah,
I'm glad it's in yours.
And I sold a few things, just here and there, and it made me feel good because you're like carrying it out into the spreading it out, because some of the stuff maybe I didn't want or I didn't read, but it got me into this again. So, but I'm talking about myself again, so
that's okay.
Set up. So when did you decide what made you decide, like, come to the decision to be like, you know what, I think I'll start a YouTube channel and I'll talk about comic books?
Yeah, I've talked about this a little before. I had moved across the country 11 years ago to start a job. And after about 3 years, they downsized. And I was like, I don't know that many people out here in the Seattle area. It might take me a while to find my next job. Mm-hmm. But I like being busy. I like working. So I go, what kind of personal project could I start up that would be fun? I'm like, well, I can always talk about comics. I can always talk about comics. So I was like, I'll just do that. I'll just do it. I'll just make and put a show out there. Maybe people watch it. Maybe they won't. It'll be something that'll keep me busy and it'll be fun. And luckily enough, it slowly grew an audience. So it felt justified. I'm grateful for it. I feel like you do build the audience that you want if you're careful,
Yeah.
and I feel like I've got some people that really know their comics and are very like kind, open-minded people. Like I'm really happy with my audience. You can't control it all, but I would say like the vast majority seems like really great people, and I'm super grateful that I get to speak to them about my favorite subject. So yeah, it just grew and grew.
That's awesome. And
It
what I
is
like
awesome.
about I learned a lot from watching some of your videos. Or maybe the obscure stuff I wouldn't have known about. Like you did and I'm bad with names, so I can't remember the exact name of the
Me
inker,
too.
but you did an episode about the ink guy that inked a lot of Jack Kirby's art, and said the man that
Oh
ruined
yeah,
Jack
Vince
Kirby's
Coletta.
art. Yeah,
Vince
Vince
Coletta.
Coletta. And I
Yeah.
was like, wow, I like so much stuff I didn't know. And
I try to generally like talk about stuff that I absolutely love most of the time because there's so
yeah,
much that I do. But I try to be honest too. And sometimes there's things that I don't like as much. And if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do a deep dive analysis and try to at least present my case. That was an inker that I'm not a fan of. A lot of people have commented on that like, hey, you know, he knew the assignment.
yeah,
The most important thing back then was hitting deadlines. And I go, fair. I just think that there's plenty of examples of artists that added to Jack Kirby's art. Maybe certain guys like Chick Stone made the women
yeah.
look a little more pretty, or guys like oh, I'm bad at names too, and it's late at night, folks. So I'm sort of forgetting a couple names. Joe Sinnott was a good inker for him. There's a bunch of good inkers and that like added. And I was like always upset that Vince Coletta was like erasing parts of it to hit deadline. I was like, no.
What are you
I want to
doing?
preserve this Jack Kirby art. So I'm not saying my opinion is right, but sometimes, if I you can't talk about nothing but good stuff or you seem like a crazy person that like likes everything. So every
Oh,
once
that's
in a
true.
while I'll try to criticize.
And it
Every
still gets
once
to be interested in it, even though like you did like the one on I think Team America
Oh sure,
and
yeah.
I
That
think
was a
a
weird
Black
comic.
Rider and all that.
Yeah.
And I mean none of that made sense. But like when you saw the cover as a kid, you're like, oh, that's so cool. Or
There
it
was
looked
some
cool.
cool
You saw
stuff
it until
about it.
you,
Yeah. The
yeah.
art wasn't
So
necessarily
see,
bad. It was just like the story was just sort of like it was designed to sell a toy and they never
yeah,
went too deep with it.
that's all. I like revisiting stuff like that maybe kind of goes under the radar now. Everybody talks
Oh
about
yeah.
Amazing Spider-Man 300 and all that, but like we were talking about with Kirby, I wonder if that's why Todd McFarlane used to most of the time. Didn't he like insist on doing his own inking at some point
Who?
or something like that?
Are you talking about Jack Kirby?
McFarlane, did he?
Oh, Todd McFarlane.
No,
Um
I was skipping ahead of that, but like, yeah,
Uh, McFarlane did a lot of inking, not generally too much on his own stuff. Sometimes, I think he did
okay,
a lot of inking to keep his hand in Spawn. Like he was ready to sort of step back from doing the regular drawing, and at a certain point, he wasn't really writing, but he wanted to stay involved, so he was like, inking for a while. And
yeah.
I think he's honestly, I think he's a pretty darn
I
good
know what the
inker. I
point I
would
was
like
trying
to
to
see
make.
him do more. Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, the point I was trying to get to, but it's late at night, like we said, was like you were talking about teams, like people that complimented each other, and like I feel like Frank Miller, who I love, I think when he didn't have Lynn Barley and Klaus Janson with him, it kind of I think it hurt his work.
I can
In
see
my
that.
opinion, I
I
mean,
think
I
that
still like it, but
yeah, I know what you mean. I mean, that was quite a trio. Klaus Jansen's just a great inker, period, but one of the best. And lately I've been thinking about how inking is slowly becoming a little bit of a dying art in comics because there's very
yeah,
few dedicated inkers. Most artists are either drawing digitally or inking themselves these days. That's become really common. The days of having a dedicated inker to work on a few books, like guys like Tom Palmer or something, are kind of gone. I love what inking can add, and I love seeing a collaboration between two artists. but it
Yeah.
isn't as common these days. And it's not purely negative either. Like there are artists that really excite me these days, Matt, like Daniel Warren Johnson.
Oh, me too.
And,
Yeah.
it's really hard to imagine somebody else inking his layouts and delivering something as cool as what he does. And when you watch his live streams, he doesn't just pull out like a brush pen, or a quill. He uses so much different media. And he must be very organized because he's always like pulling out like, very specific types of
Yeah.
pens and brushes. And it really like it's additive. He creates something really amazing himself. So that's awesome. That's awesome. But I do miss the days of super talented inkers, like say these days Jimmy Palmiotti writes a lot, but he's a great inker, and I miss seeing him work
Yeah.
monthly. That's all.
Yeah. And as an artist, like I said, my mom is, but I used to draw, but like the talent didn't reach this part of this side of the family apparently. So, anyway, do you think that the way you were talking about, you mentioned drawing digitally?
Yeah.
I see, like I even see Tom McFarlane has one of those little digital pads. Like, do you think that's going to change the way people learn to draw in the future? Like, will they even draw with pencils? You think one day we might live in a world where there's no pencils?
No, I don't. I don't think that, because I enjoy drawing digitally, but I prefer working with like physical materials.
Pen to paper type thing. Yeah.
Some of it is like, the workflow, and not necessarily what you prefer to do, but like, can an artist hit their deadlines in a certain, so somebody like Marco Cicchetto, I think, draws a lot digitally these days because for him it's faster and it lets him hit the deadlines. But I don't think it'll ever go away. I think it's legit fun. Artists have fun playing with different tools and different papers and seeing the different results. And if we're being honest, the margins for making money in comics are very small. Okay. Yeah. There's always a few guys at the top, but generally the margins are small. And there is a secondary income source when you can have originals to sell.
Yeah.
As compared to a print or something like that. And I think that like a lot of artists consider that. It isn't the driving force of their approach, but it is a consideration, So I don't think we'll get to a point where people only want to draw digitally. I think it's just another tool in the belt. Drawing digitally is still using your hands and stuff. You just can like make quick corrections, for instance, or you can zoom in and do very minute detail in a different way than you can with brushes and pens.
Yeah.
I think that's all it is.
Yeah. Let's go back to the I asked you why you started the YouTube channel. Well, what do you like about? What's the thing you like most about doing it?
Probably just the excuse to go back and read a story or a series of comics and appreciate it on another level than just letting the story wash over me.
Yeah.
Like I love all sorts of storytelling, on TV, books, movies, music, I like that stuff. What I'm saying is that with comics, sometimes I appreciate it so much. I get excited to go, okay, I know the story. Now let's like really decide, like, why did this artist use this panel structure? What shapes are they using? What decisions are they using for when they're revealing things? And what kind of expressions are they using? Where are they placing the camera? Or how is a writer pacing the story? I really like thinking about storytelling on a technical level. So that's what's fun for me. That's why the channel gives me pleasure. It's, you know what, now that I'm thinking it through too, maybe on a more selfish level.
Yeah.
I was just saying, like, quickly, on a selfish level, it is nice when a video does well and there are like comments going like, oh, I'm going to go read this now, or you giving me something new to think about. That makes me feel good.
Well, yeah, you're the reason I checked out or had the hard boiled, like you talked about it of
Cool.
Jeff Darrow, and I was like, oh, I got to check that out.
That's so
So
cool. Thank you.
and I kind of want to do that too. Like one of my big things about YouTube was getting to talk to people that are like minded, because I
Yeah.
don't know a lot of people around where I live that really collect comics, and
Yeah.
I don't get out that much. I'm disabled, and so that's just kind of an outlet for me. I didn't want to do it, and I was selling a little bit on Whatnot, and I got out of that because you can't really win over there. Anyway, so I saw some people doing some YouTube stuff, and I knew a guy that bought something from me. I said, I'll ask him if I can come on their show, and I got to go on their show, and I said, I'm just going to do it. I said, I'm not worried about it, We've got some comments in the chat here.
Great.
We already went over the series, but who's one of your favorite superheroes?
I think a lot of my superhero favorites tend to stay the same. I generally these days personally tend to follow artists and writers that I like more than characters, but I grew up like loving certain characters. Spider-Man, Iron Fist was an early one for some reason.
I like that.
What else Captain America, Batman, yes, kind of classics. Maybe that's a vanilla answer, but then again, I think vanilla is delicious. So
maybe, but I like it too. And I mean, I do like Luke Cage and Iron Fist, maybe, as you can tell from the name of my channel.
I love, exactly. That's right. That's the name of your channel. I don't think that there are enough superhero comics that are like buddy cop team up type things. Right. I love the idea of not a hero and a sidekick, but like two equals that are like friends and equals, and they have different ways of looking at the world, so that there's some conflict there, but seeing them work together, I love the idea of like a two-hander.
And you can guarantee Luke Cage is going to get paid remember, there's I went over this on my show one evening on my Sunday evening show, and I showed a panel of him going to Latveria because Doom owed him $200.
I made an early episode about my show about that because that just always cracked me up. He spent well more than the $300. Yeah. It was the principal to him.
Like $200 is $200. Yeah, he was keeping it real.
Give me my money, honey.
Here's he says, Comic Tropes introduced me to Daniel Warren Johnson. I'll always be grateful for that. See?
I'm glad I was reading some of his stuff early enough. Wow, that guy really blows me away. I think he's one of the most exciting people in comics today. And there's honestly, I think DC has a really strong bench of artists right now. There's guys like Dan Mora, Daniel Sampare, Jorge Jimenez. I don't know. Just DC has a lot of really good artists right now.
The art he's been doing had been doing on Batman. It was great. He's still got some chops, and then they got some great writers over there too, like Joshua Williamson, who works for them sometimes.
Yes,
he's doing the G.I. Joe right now.
Yeah,
the new G.I. Joe.
He's doing a great job.
Thankfully, we still have the Larry Hama G.I. Joe too. So
personally, I am happy to get two different versions.
Me too.
I think we're in sort of an era where people are very okay with more than one take on a character. Because some of the most popular comics right now are the absolute and ultimate comics.
Yes.
And it doesn't seem like it's hurting, the standard Batman or Spider-Man books. It doesn't seem like that. Now, there has got to be a point of saturation, and I don't know what specifically it would be, where it's feeding off of itself. Like maybe there should only be one Batman book in the main continuity and absolute Batman. Maybe. I don't know.
Is DC going to do that though? Because he's
people seem to like the new versions. I like the new versions. I think that right now, out of them, the book Ultimates is fantastic, and Absolute Wonder Woman is really, really, really cool.
And you remember, Batman and Superman are the horse that got him to the race or whatever, as they say. And I remember in the '90s. Look at Batman as a good example. There was Batman, Detective Comics, Shadow of the Bat, Legends of the
Yes.
Dark Knight.
Yeah,
They
he had
had
about 4
yeah,
monthly ones.
and
But
then
these days, there's more.
oh, there's even more. Like they have all these miniseries. Like they just had the one where it's got the werewolf in it,
Yeah.
and then you got the Absolute Batman. There's just so many. They get was it
Off
Elseworld
World,
Batman? Yeah,
Batman and Robin. Yeah, again, like I do think that like, and I'm not saying anything bad about any of them, but probably the average reader can't get them all. But it is interesting that they're open to also different versions. They're like, okay, regular Batman and Absolute Batman, fine, I get it. 2 different Batman stories, totally fine. Like people get that now. They like 30 years ago, that would have been way more confusing. Because I can remember being, like a nerdy guy that was like, getting early, say Batman Returns, those movies, and my friends and I would be like, well, it was fun, it was cool, but they didn't get the origin quite right. We were so against another take on things. We were like, oh, people will think that this is what's in the comics, and that's not true. It's so nerdy in retrospect. But these days, we're just like, oh yeah, this is
well,
this world.
yeah.
This
Well,
is another
Spider
world.
Man's kind of like a literary character now, like James Bond or somebody. Like you could take the character of James Bond and put him in any time period, and he'll still be James Bond. So it doesn't matter.
That's an interesting idea. Yeah, that would be very cool to see, say, like James Bond in the 1800s or something, going on a mission to
Yeah,
like the American West or something.
it'd be maybe you could meet up with Red Coat or something in the or
That's a
Simon
good plan.
Pure. I don't know if you've been reading that one, but
Oh yeah, yeah. No, I interviewed Brian Hitch and Jeff
that's right.
Johns recently.
That's right. That's right.
I like
Um,
Redcoat a lot.
I love the historical kind of like I know it's like distorted. It's like a Quentin Tarantino like history, but you
Yeah,
still
no, it's
have
historical fiction, but I like it. I like it quite a
yeah, I
bit.
do too. And the whole I like the fact that he teamed up with little Albert Einstein,
Oh, I know.
and that
It's
was just
great.
a very emotional story. Like I think you kind of touched on the interview you did with him, where he's. I don't want to blow up for anybody that's not read it, but we're talking about he goes and visits his old friend,
Yeah.
and like that's something you rarely see in some comic books these days. It's like real heart to something like.
I think that's what makes the comic ultimately memorable. Like a good action scene is fun, but you're more likely to remember a story overall if it has an emotional core that you can relate to, like a father-son dynamic or somebody out to prove their worth to the world. Like there needs to be something real at the core. That's my personal take.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that. All right, let's. I kind of freeze up sometimes at the.
I'm glad you've got notes. This is fun.
All right, we've already went over half of this stuff though. Well, here's an interesting one. It's kind of off topic. Do you collect anything else besides comics?
Oh, a little bit. I'll get I've sort of stopped this one, but I did when I moved out here start collecting every version of Donatello that I could find, like as an action figure,
Yeah,
because there've been so many crazy toy variations. So I I collected that. I've sort of backed off lately. I do get a bunch of the Hot Toys figures based on MCU characters. Not every single one, but a lot of them.
yeah.
A lot of them. Like I'm looking up at my shelf behind the camera, and there's and this is maybe half of them, and there's probably like 30 Hot Toys.
Oh,
So I like
wow.
those. I like those a lot.
I do that with some of these McFarlane statues.
Oh yeah, those are impressive.
And I got the Hulk 340, Hulk 345, and the ASM 323 one.
Fun.
And I don't know. I don't go all out like maybe like like a guy like Jim at Collectibles got all those sideshow statues, but I got a few little trinkets here and there, and I collect some games. But okay, there was something else I was going to ask you. Oh, I guess okay, you've already talked about this at length though, because I watched a video on it. But what was it like working with these guys that were like trying to help people on the street, like with the hero thing.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So for people that don't know what we're talking about, I dressed up as a real life superhero, is what they're called, for a year, with a guy named Phoenix Jones. And that was because when I moved out here to Seattle, I really didn't know anybody, except I had interviewed Phoenix Jones for a blog. And he's like this guy in Seattle. He's an MMA guy, and he dresses up, basically his homemade Batman costume. And so when I came here, I was just like, hey, let's, go out and get dinner or something. And he was like, inviting me to tag along with his friends. And, I felt like they were doing some good work. And I was like, all right, let's see if, like, dressing
Yeah.
up in a superhero costume and actually, like, getting into, like, fights with drunk people and administering first aid to people that get injured in the city at night and tracking people down. Let's see if, like, this actually works. My conclusion that I sort of came up with, Matt, was that you can do good work without putting on a mask and in a costume, basically.
Yeah.
That's sort of the conclusion that I came to. I mean, sometimes I think I might make a comic about it, like a nonfiction comic about it, because there were legit fights and car chases. And one time, like on New Year's, where I helped a guy find his girlfriend, who she only spoke Spanish and they didn't have a phone. So, like, I spent the night looking for her, found her. There were times, where I saw a taxi hit 4 people and had to administer some first aid and, give statement to police. So, like, you did come across some crazy things, but I'll be honest, if you walk around any major city from, like, 10 to 2 or 3 a.m., you're going to come across crazy stuff. And if you just step up and help them, you're going to have those experiences. I felt like I got to a point where I felt like that the guys that I was patrolling with were a little off. They wanted attention, and I felt like their lives were a little disorganized and chaotic, and that they might do something dumb, and I didn't want to be associated with it. Like, there was one guy that always wanted to bring knives, and we're like, no, we're wearing a mask. You cannot walk around with actual weapons.
The actual police will think you're a threat, or you might do something.
You could get yourself in a lot of trouble.
Yeah,
they tolerated us. Because, for the most part, most of them were okay with what we did. 1 or 2 of them, like, just very much did not like us. But I don't think that anything we were doing was, like, anything they could really arrest us for. So it was it was a very unique experience. I will say that it was a very unique experience.
Well, I mean, it's a little story you can always tell people, I mean.
Oh yeah.
I don't know. I didn't know if I should ask about that or not. I wouldn't.
Oh, I don't mind talking about it. I don't, like, brag about it, because it's not like I'm not, like, proud of it. Like, oh, I saved all these lives. I was such a hero.
Did you ever have any of those guys, like the fake, like these guys that pretend like, I was fought in the Kumite.
Yeah. I got into the secret Kumite. That was a point where I was in very good health and shape, and I guess I was like, well, maybe I'll put this to use. And it was like more like an experiment to see.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I think we're doing good, but we're also not, like, inspiring people in, like, some huge way. They're like, oh wow, there's real superheroes. I'm going to be a better person. It didn't really change anything, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll see. I might make a comic about it someday.
I became aware of him because he was on an episode of Comic Book Man.
Yes, I helped organize that.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. Because Phoenix, he never checked his email or anything, so he gave me access to his accounts and stuff, and socials and stuff. So, like, all that stuff was for like that year period was filtering through me. And he was like, oh, just let me know, if there's any opportunities that look interesting, but, basically say no to most of them. And that one I was like, well, this seems fun. You'll get paid, you'll get flown out, you'll get some TV time. He, I remember, was very irritated because he thought that they were going to take it very seriously and go on patrol in serious costumes. I was like, no,
Yeah.
dude, I told you, like, this is sort of a comedy show.
You
Like,
could tell
come
he
on.
was getting pissed.
He did. He
They were
legit
goofing
got
off.
pissed. And I was like, dude, come on.
I mean, that's like, I don't know. That kind of reminds me of like, I don't know. You remember like I hear Bob Odenkirk talk about the experience of like being a writer on Saturday Night Live when Steven Seagal was the guest.
Oh yeah, yeah.
He's like, I don't really get what you people do here. He said,
You don't know Saturday Night Live?
He's like, you don't know what Saturday Night Live is?
Okay.
I don't believe you.
Legendarily bad host. There's a lot of funny stories behind the scenes from that.
Oh yeah. Well, I've heard some, crazy stuff about him and Judo Gene LaBelle getting into an altercation.
I heard about that one. If
So,
you don't know what you're talking, if you don't know this, folks, take a second to look up on YouTube Gene LaBelle, Steven Seagal. The stories about it are pretty damn funny.
Yeah, and I've seen it on several. There's like a guy I watch on YouTube called Viking Warrior, and he interviews all these like martial artists that were in movies, like Cynthia Rothrock, and all those.
Yeah.
And he had a guy on there that was there when the incident we're talking about happened, and he says it didn't happen exactly the way they say it, but it did happen.
Oh, it happened.
But Gio Gino Bell is one of those guys you don't mess with, even like.
Well, he's a real life tough guy,
as
compared to sort of like somebody that's pretending to be.
Yeah, it's a difference when they like Bruce Lee says in the movie, boards don't hit back.
That's good.
Yeah,
yes.
But, I don't know. Anyway, so what are some of your favorite movies? Like, could be animated.
It changes a lot. It changes a lot. Sometimes I'm like, I really do like a wide variety of genres.
Yeah.
Hold on, my mic I sort of dropped. Sometimes I like, classics like a Casablanca or It's a Wonderful Life. If it's like, martial arts, something like Drunken Master 2 and Fist of Legend, or more recently things like Ong Bak and what was that? The Raid and The Raid 2. Those were damn good.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. A lot of the stuff I grew up with, I think, holds up really well. I can rewatch Ghostbusters or Back to the Future a lot.
Oh, me too.
Oh, you know what? Love Raiders of the Lost Ark. That's way up there. That's way up there for me. I can always watch that. I don't know.
I remember, we got a few people talk about like Stand By Me and Creep Show.
Those are fun, man.
Yeah, I love those kind of movies like that too. I like all kinds. It's not all just,
It would be really hard for me to just list a single one because, if you hold me to it, maybe I'll come up with something. But you ask me tomorrow, and my opinion might have shifted a little, depending on what interests me at the time. But I do love movies. On my I've got a second channel called Comic Tropes After Dark, and comic book artist Jim. Go ahead. I was talking over you. I'm sorry.
Oh no, I'm sorry. I think my video skipped. I didn't hear what you said.
I was just saying on my second channel, Comic Tropes After Dark, sometimes my friend Jim Mafood and I will review not necessarily bad movies, but at least sort of schlock or underperforming movies. Sometimes they're bad. Because we both love movies too. And we're like, but everybody's talked about like the great stuff. Let's talk about the lesser known stuff.
Yeah, and some of the bad stuff's actually good, but in a different way good. But
yeah, it's still entertaining.
It's funny you'd mention that because me and one of my friends, my friend Joe, are going to maybe do a show where we review a bad movie.
Sure, and, it's fun.
We're just going to call it like Matt and Joe's Bad Cinema, and we already voted. I had a poll put up for my subscribers, like what movie to do first, and like the choices were like Troll 2. Hard Ticket to Hawaii by Andy Sedaris.
Yep.
Basket Case and Chud.
And Chud. Okay.
And the Hard Ticket to Hawaii won. I wonder why. Andy Sedaris always had two things: Playmates and giant explosions.
Was
So
that the one where the guy blows up the inflatable doll with the rocket launcher?
he blows up the snake. It's like a fake, like
Oh, the
rubber
snake, I
snake.
remember. Okay, it's the one with the snake.
And
Yeah.
the snake had been bitten by cancer-ridden, crazy rats, and it made it insane. That was what they wrote. I don't know
Yes.
how much narcotics they were doing when they wrote this movie, but I'm sure it was ample.
I will say, out of those four, I would sincerely say that Basket Case and Chud are relatively good movies.
Oh yeah, they are. I don't know if
Beyond
they're
just
so bad they're
entertaining, I
good.
think that they're pretty good for what they are.
I guess just B movies, because there
B
are B
movies,
movies
sure.
that are good at what they do.
Yeah.
So
I love that stuff. Yeah, I'll watch anything. You know what's been a huge boon to me is sorting through Tubi, the free streaming
oh
service
yes,
Tubi.
yes.
Yeah, you get commercials, but it has a tremendous amount of crazy movies, not just from America, but you could find Italian schlock and Hong
Yeah, I
Kong
know.
stuff, and yeah, it's good.
It's gotten better. It used to be pretty bad, but now it's like got all this cool stuff on it,
It's got so much cool schlocky stuff.
And I enjoy that. Like I always enjoy a good canon film.
Oh yeah,
They know how to do the schlock for sure. Like
absolutely. A
and
Death
I've
Wish
seen,
3 or something.
yeah,
Good stuff.
and I've seen some Roger Corman movies. Like David Carradine was in, and I swear he had to be drunk
Oh yeah,
when he did this movie. There's just no way he was not hammered. Like,
I think he was in a lot of movies. Yeah.
but I don't know. I don't want to talk bad about the dead because I always liked Carradine, even though I feel that Bruce Lee should have got the part in the
Well,
in
of
the
course
TV
he
show.
should have, but the whole Carradine family is a bunch of talented actors.
Yes, they are. I can't remember the.
Here's Keith and David and who's the third brother that I'm not thinking of? I don't know.
Yeah, they were like the Baldwins before the Baldwins. All the brother actors like that, and but yeah, I get into all the old. I don't know. I don't know what kid my age. I think you're around my age. Didn't at least
Robert.
dress,
Thank you, Elastibox.
at least didn't
Robert.
dress like a ninja one time on Halloween. At least
Oh,
once.
okay. I think everybody has.
And well, I guess is anybody well, let's ask if anybody in the chat before we go has any questions.
Sure, yeah.
It says
for
he was
whatever.
the dad in Lizzie McGuire. I did not know that. All right.
Yeah, I never saw that. That was, I don't know when that came out exactly, but yeah, I was either in college or working, so that one.
And I did want to share with you, my mom. I talked her into finally doing one of these plank covers.
Look at that! You said your mom drew that?
Yeah.
Well, she's very talented. That's awesome.
She usually does oil paintings, but
Mm-hmm.
well, I don't know if we got anybody wanting to ask any questions, but we'll give you a few more minutes. While we're sitting here talking, what was I was going to talk about, but I can't remember. I think I've already asked all the questions, so I feel like an amateur now. I try to be all professional, and then
I think all of us that are on YouTube are technically amateurs, so that's fine.
yeah, it's cool.
It's
cool.
more important to have fun and engage.
I don't know if I'll be able to edit like intros like you got. Mine feels like a slideshow from like MySpace.
How'd you get that song though? Where's that from?
Oh, my friend has this AI app, and he typed in my name.
Oh,
Where I'm from, and I thought it actually turned out pretty good. I mean, for being created by Skynet.
Yeah, that's funny.
But I don't know. What have you been reading lately? That's the question I meant to ask.
Let's see. I mean, a fair amount. The stuff that stands out is stuff that I'm especially enjoying is Transformers. Actually, I'm a little surprised by that. Let's see. Thank you, Drunky. Noted. Let's see. I think Absolute Wonder Woman and actually regular Wonder Woman is both pretty fantastic right now. I've been enjoying Hulk. I've been enjoying a bunch of stuff at Image. Radiant Black And oh, let me plug something.
Go ahead.
Radiant Black 32 next month, March. Would love it if anyone out there watching would consider asking their store to order them a copy. I got to write and illustrate a backup in that. So it's small, but
Cool.
Radiant Black 32 from Image.
Radiant Black 32.
Yeah. I like Red Coat through Ghost Machine quite a bit. For manga, I think that Dandadan and Spy Family are both pretty fantastic these days. There's a lot. There's a lot. It all blends together.
I'll have to check that out next time at a comic shop.
Oh, I hope you will. Issue 31 comes out the end of February, and that's sort of a fresh jumping on point for readers that have either not read it before or have like lapsed or anything. There's sort of like, a nice, easy reset jump on point. But I've got like a little backup in 32 next month.
And I'm kind of glad you did that, because I was going to ask you like if you had any like projects you're working on.
Yeah, I'm also writing a comic, like just like a one-shot horror story.
Oh,
And
cool.
So like when Drunky was like, if I need somebody to draw my comic, I've talked about this here and there on my live streams, like, my ideas. I think I'm ready to start like finding the right artist, because I like drawing, but I think I'm a very slow artist. And if I want to get this out at a good time, I need to find an artist. And I'm leaning towards doing crowdfunding. Seeing how that goes. We'll see.
Well, let me know, and I'll send me the information if you get something set up.
Yeah,
and I'll promote it on my show.
Thank you. It's not going to be in the next week or two, but
hopefully, God willing, the creek doesn't rise.
So far, we like knock on wood, we're doing okay so far.
We did have one when I was 1 year old. There was a flood here, and it
really.
Yeah, it was over the rooftops of all the houses. So
wow,
we're in a flood area. It's just, but we got the pump going in the basement. We'll be all right. If it does, I'll get the old pontoon boat out, as long as it doesn't have a hole in it.
I went through one of those when I lived in New Orleans, and I lost like a year's worth of everything, including my comics. So it's awful. I don't wish it on anyone, even people that I wouldn't like. It's a really tough thing to go through.
All those poor people in North Carolina and Tennessee down there when the hurricane went through, and they it's probably one of the worst things you can go through.
It really is. It really is devastating. So I'm just definitely thinking good thoughts to the folks in Kentucky right now. I hope that the water just can start to recede. We're good. We're good.
We're good on weather events in the United States for the next few months, please.
Yeah.
Do we have some questions now? I get into talking and I forget to check the chat. Here you go. Here's a question from.
We talked about it back and forth. The best of all time. That's a tough one to say.
That's a hard one.
Sometimes I'm like, maybe Godfather Part 2. A lot of people have said that, but it really is a solid piece of entertainment. I rewatched that like a couple months ago, and I was like, that really holds up as exciting. But I mean, it depends in a way, like what genres somebody prefers. If you're going to say it's the best.
Yeah, and my favorite movie alternates. Like, it depends on what kind of mood I'm in. What we were talking about earlier, like maybe for the next 2 weeks, Blade Runner will be this is the greatest movie I've ever seen. Something will just stand out again to me, or maybe it'll be Chinatown or something. Or
Chinatown's good. I need to rewatch that one. That is an efficient script and a great performance. Great set of performances, really.
Yeah, John Huston, and he's got a little part in it.
True. Oh, what a scumbag he is.
But I used to have to watch all those movies with my dad, like and my mom called like The Treasure of the Sierra Madre and The African Queen, and all those movies.
Some Bogart stuff.
Yeah, and Casablanca. My mom really loved
Casablanca.
And it's a perfect film the way they got it set up, and I think it's still not all the movies from those eras or any era hold up for that matter.
It's amazing.
Some of them do, and that's one of them.
And Casablanca was like really kind of like rushed and like figuring out all sorts of things on the fly, but it just came out great.
And we got here's a good question, because I have an answer too, but of course we'll let you answer. Favorite anime or anime movie?
For movie, I keep coming back to Akira. It's just it's got such good music. It's got such fluid animation, like lots and lots of frames. But for show, I think Cowboy Bebop, like kind of like because it has a beginning, middle, and an end, and it doesn't overstay its welcome. I think that's way up there.
Yeah, and like Akira, what I loved about Akira was also the soundtrack.
Yeah,
it was
those Taito drums.
Yeah, it's just that was my first introduction, so that was like the gateway for a lot of people, I think, especially in the States.
It's a high watermark still. It really is.
And then I discovered like other stuff. I used to Cowboy Bebop and Ninja Scroll, Vampire Hunter D, Fist of the
Loved
North
all
Star.
those. Loved finding those were all things I was watching in the 80s. Like there were no reviews or anything like that.
No, you just watched it. You just
but those were all really good. And then discovering like all the Miyazaki films, like I love Spirited Away. Spirited Away is way up there for me.
And I just like, and there was a show I used to watch about was it a vamp? No, it wasn't a vamp. He was a vampire, but he was controlled by the Vatican or something, or the English government. It's called Hellsing.
Blood?
Hellsing.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't think I saw that one then. Yep,
okay, if you ever get a chance, check it out. It's called Hellsing. It's like a.
I've heard of it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, and I don't know. I could give a lot of answers on that. Yeah, we got some answers in the chat, like Fist of the North Star.
Love that manga.
Yep, Samurai Champ. I don't know if I've heard of that one, but Samurai. I think I've heard
that was
of
a TV show here in America, but yeah.
Okay. So about Long Kiss Goodnight. Yeah, that movie's underrated. It's
super
for what
underrated.
it is. Yeah, it's a great action flick, and Gina Davis was like a badass in that movie.
Mm-hmm. I think that was also a Shane Black movie. Yet another of his movies set at Christmas.
Here we got a question from James Stewart.
Hey, James. Any trends you'd like to see the comic industry take in the next few years? That I'd like to see? I'd like to see them just attempt some different things with distribution. I'd love to see them make some inroads into getting into just, back into places where people are. Grocery stores, convenience stores, subway stations. Let's get back to seeing what we could make for stuff that is intended to be disposable entertainment. If it does really well, you can always put it together in, like a trade paperback. But let's just try to see, because I'd just love to see some people take some chances and see if we could find some ways to introduce it to new readers.
Yeah.
Every time I go to Europe or Japan, it seems like they put these comics everywhere and that like all sorts of people read them. And I feel like America is still a little resistant. So I'd like to see that.
Yeah, I wish they would come back to the grocery stores, or like it seems like a lot of even Walmart, but they have stuff, but they've
tried it here and there, but they haven't done it well.
I know they have not done it well. And the only other place that I ever get comics is not a comic shop. Is like it's not online or eBay or whatnot.
And it's
gonna be like Ollie's or something if I don't go to a comic shop or someplace like that.
Yeah,
and you can't guarantee. But it would be nice to see spinner racks return. That's what
I'd love it. I'd love it.
Yeah. Mainly because maybe I can get my hands on one and I have to pay $500 now because they jack up the price. But
yep,
especially if it's a legitimate, like was in that has the comics sign on the top, they'll ask top dollar for it.
They do. I think that there's a Kickstarter that's about to launch where you can get one that looks like an old-fashioned spinner rack, but it also easily collapses so that people could take it to conventions and use it as a display item by their table. And I want to say that it was like between $300 and $400. So it was like, it was reasonable enough, I think. Yeah. I can't remember who was making it though. I'm sorry.
Who were you? I have just one more question. I guess I'll ask and we'll go. Like, of all the artists you've interviewed or creators, was there anyone you were nervous to interview?
Oh, absolutely. Basically, the bigger fan I am of them from childhood, the more nervous I am to speak to them. So basically, the one that I was like, hopefully I hide it because I've done a lot of interviews over my life.
Yeah.
But Larry Hama,
Oh
you know,
God.
because I love G.I. Joe, and he is notoriously, he can get, I don't know if cranky is the right word. That's probably overstating things. I'm just like at a loss. You know, he doesn't suffer fools though, and he doesn't want to be asked certain things about, like, you know, his military career or personal life.
Oh yeah.
So you know, like, you've got to like try to come up with new questions, but within the bounds of, like, you know, his creative work. And you have to know your stuff, because if you ask a dumb question, he's just going to be a little irritated. So I was a little nervous going into that, but I felt like it still came out well. So yeah.
I just got that one.
Oh, look at that. Yeah, that was a fun issue where Cobra almost finds out the Joe's secret underground location with that robot that like splits apart and tries to get to the surface.
Yeah. I love these. I'm trying to get the whole run again.
I had the whole run, but that was something I sold off. And these days it's so funny. Issue 155, the final issue, is the hardest one to find because the print run was lower. Yeah.
That's what we were talking about. You talking about the guy that collects like final issues. So some of them are kind of tough to get, like, or some of them are cost a couple of bucks,
which can make it fun exercise.
Yeah. And there's nothing better than like finding one. Like, I'll go through. That's why I collect like that. And I'm just trying to get. I'm about 50% done with the run. I guess collection, maybe 60%. I got some more coming. So, but it's like one of those things, you know. Then I'll move on to the next one. Like, I got my Captain America. I guess it's obvious I like Captain America. So,
do you?
I've been getting all the like we were talking about Mike Zeck, and like I've just watched that video you did about Mike Zeck 5 times because just because I like
Cap was great.
Yeah, I just like looking at the artwork and like what he did with Captain America.
He was pushing himself.
I know it's almost as I ain't trying to. I'm not trying to say he's better. I'm just saying like the Captain America I grew up with was Mike Zeck's Captain America. So I mean I like Kirby, but like I feel like a lot of the guys my age or younger kind of click more with him.
Well, maybe it's heresy, but I think that my favorite Captain America run, and there've been a lot of them to be clear, because I like that character. I think I've said that, but my favorite run has become the Ed Brubaker, mostly Steve Epting run with for instance, Winter Soldier. It's a hell of a run.
The way Brubaker just had it all set up, and the way
and it keeps moving and changing, and it moves at a great pace. Captain America
didn't like make it boring and let it drag out, but he let it drag out, but not in a boring way. Like he built suspense. He built suspense like on a page. Like, well, what's going to happen next? I remember reading it.
Yeah,
and
I like it.
I think that's why he's good at the noir type stuff too. I think he's good at building tension in a scene or like some intrigue. Like you had the guy. What was the guy? Remember the guy they were after, the Russian guy?
Yes.
Who was trying to get the cosmic cube. I can't remember his name.
I'm forgetting too. It was like something with like a Z.
About, and it was like the Red Skull was trying to like possess his body or something.
Yep.
And
it was great.
It's just so interesting. Then like, well, who is the Winter Soldier? You know, you start out there like Philadelphia, and they have that attack.
Just a great retcon. That's an example of a retcon that was like really well done.
It doesn't really mess up the old history of the characters either. It just
builds on what we've heard.
Like what was happening to this guy. It's kind of like my favorite of the new Star Wars movies was actually Rogue One because of that reason.
Rogue One was very good. I rewatched it. I was on a plane recently, and I was like, maybe I'll rewatch Rogue One. I remember I liked this one a lot. I watched it all the way through again. It was great. It
was kind of like, how do you you get to like figure out how the sausage was made, so to speak. Like, how did they get the information to destroy the Death Star?
That's what I like about that their spin-off prequel show Andor, is you're getting to see the Empire is like kind of crazy powerful, but how would it really work? And you're like, oh, this is like how it works day to day by just like changing laws so fast that people can't keep up. I'm like, okay, I think people in the real world can relate to things like this. Like I like that show quite a bit.
Yeah, it's.
But thank you, Nowhere Bound, for the kind comment. I really appreciate it a lot. Thank you.
He also says that Mike Zeck is amazing. Check out his Shang-Chi if you get a chance. Yes, I got some of the Shang-Chi coming in the mail probably tomorrow or the next day. So I've been going back and getting a lot of his old stuff.
Yeah.
But I really think that, I guess I don't want to keep y'all. It's already late. I know it's
not as late for me, so don't worry.
Yeah, it's 2:15 a.m. here. I don't know if you're in for a penny, you might as well be in for a pound, as they say, I guess. But there was one more question I had.
Whatever. Yeah.
If I can remember it now. But when I get off on a diatribe, I forget. I get distracted easy. We'll start talking about.
How dare you have fun talking about comics and storytelling? How dare you, Matt?
You talk about Captain America or G.I. Joe or the Uncanny X-Men, then I'd be here all night because I could talk about.
I get that. I do.
And that's why I don't know if I want to really. I don't know if I could interview like Larry Hama. He would probably get freaked out at me because I'd be like Chris Farley on the episode of Saturday Night Live.
Remember that time when Serpentor got killed by Zartan? Yes, of course.
What was that like?
That was awesome.
It was awesome. Man.
That was awesome.
These all that stupid questions. I love that stuff, though, man. With the stories, like, no, okay. What was one of the funniest things that ever happened when you're interviewing somebody?
Oh, something unexpected or funny. I'm sure that they've. This one wasn't on Comic Tropes, but before Comic Tropes, I used to do a podcast with my friends for 7 years talking about TV. And I would interview actors and writers and stuff like that. And I remember I interviewed George R.R. Martin just before the Game of Thrones show had started. And I remember we got into a polite argument because he really dislikes the New England Patriots, and I'm from Boston, so I challenged him on how, like, there's a line in his one of his books where he says, like, a giant defeated a patriot, and I was like, that seems a little underhanded, and we had a fun little argument there. That was good. That was good. Yeah. It was all good fun. You have to be willing to challenge your interviewee a little. That doesn't mean being rude, but I think it's fair to challenge them a little, because I had interviewed Stan Lee too, and I remember at the time he had just put out this trailer for a show he was going to make with Arnold Schwarzenegger called The Governator, and I was like, this doesn't really look like, it doesn't scream quality. Like, how did this come about? And I was just like, I know that was like sort of pushing it. This guy doesn't have to answer some nobody's question, but he took it in stride and gave me a solid answer.
I guess it's kind of like, I don't know. Sometimes you got to do, I guess, bad stuff just to pay the bills. I mean, like what Michael Caine said about Jaws 4 when somebody asked him, what was it so terrible about being in Jaws 4? He said, well, I got fond memories of that. It bought me my house.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I guess
I think he was not available to accept his Academy Award because he was filming that movie.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I forgot Michael Caine.
Michael Caine's great.
Well, hey, Chris, I really appreciate you coming on here, man.
I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you and talk to your audience. I love talking comics. Seems like you've got a lot of passion for comics, but and you've got like your specific things that you love, and I think that that's so important. And I hope that you're able to continue to spread that passion to new people. I really think it's important that there's a lot of awesome, like, fun and education and that you can get out of comic books and storytelling. So thank you for sharing it.
Well, thanks for sharing some of your stories with us.
Awesome.
And I was going to sign off there, but as I always sign off, because I used to watch The Amazing Spider-Man and His Friends. Sunday mornings, he goes, and I always remember Stan Lee's voice saying, "Until next time, true believers."